Okay. We're back.
We're back.
A lot on the docket today. Ready to podcast.
It's a juicy, spicy docket. Third Mike Lenny.
Lenny's here.
Instead of like gross,
it's going to be a
dry
fussing
mouth sounds, it's
baby.
going to be like wet.
Oh, I need my Diet Coke.
Oops.
Fuck, it's okay.
It's going to be like wet, binky sucking sound.
Maybe he'll throw up.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't.
Or he's already like thrown up and pooped on me many a time.
It's this
people
is
seem
our
to like that ASMR at
on the
the
last
beginning
app?
of the last app.
Yeah.
So maybe we can
maybe I'll crack the Coke right.
replicate that magic moment.
Nice.
Okay. We're back.
And the baby sounds, I feel like, are maybe having a subliminal influence on our listeners to encourage
them to procreate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a
homosexual adoption soars.
This is a pro-natalist podcast.
It is, yeah. Did you see Paul Krugman being like, well, there's not really an economic case for pronatalism. And he got like trounced.
Shut
on
up.
The TL. 'Cause it's like, dude,
is
you're
he
like
gay?
65 and you live with your old lady and 2 fur babies.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It takes all kinds.
Yeah.
Not everyone's cut out for it, for sure.
That's true, yeah. But it's creepy to see like an economist boomer argue
definitely
against it. Anyway.
Russia won the Olympic gold in gymnastics, men and women.
And really?
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Major.
Ura.
Very significant in my family as the child of aspiring Olympians. The Olympics are like a really big deal.
Yeah.
It's very charged. So I got very emotional.
Yeah.
Watching the Russians win.
I got emotional because that Dishy Armenian guy.
So hot.
Won. He's the one that won gold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's hot. He looks like Alain Delon.
And he tore his Achilles heel like 3 months ago or something.
Okay.
And then landed that incredible jump.
Damn.
My father had an Achilles injury.
Yeah.
Out of college. It's great. It's great to see a Slav winning.
Yeah. Russian greatness.
Russia is, of course, not allowed to formally participate in the Olympics.
Country.
It's not really a Russian gold. It's the Russian Olympic Committee.
Yeah.
And the Russian flag and national anthem are both banned.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
why they're flying the flag that's like the little Olympic torch.
Mm-hmm.
And the colors are the colors of the flag, but they won't. They did this in the Winter Olympics too, remember?
Right, yeah.
They had those cool, very like...
But that's just like saying the N-word instead of saying the actual word. You know, people get that it's Russia.
We all know,
and you know.
It's not like there's another team doing that.
Yeah.
And that's because of like doping, allegedly.
Allegedly. As if Russia's the only team doping.
Yeah.
As if all these athletes aren't on some kind of meds. I think Simone Biles probably off her meds, but...
Simone Biles... So that's the other big story from the gymnastics competition is Simone Biles withdrew.
Yeah.
Citing mental health concerns.
Yeah.
And then I saw some people speculating that... so then the U.S. won silver.
Okay.
And then I saw people speculating that it's because she's off her Adderall.
Well, Russia's been on a kind of athletic downturn for like decades now, so it's nice to see them bounce back.
Yeah, they haven't.
Also, I don't buy this like doping allegation thing. I mean, I do buy that they were possibly doping, but like
I think the problem was it was like state sanctioned doping. It wasn't just that there was a
how villainous
phenomenon of like athletes dosing themselves. It was like sort of the corruption and state sanction angle of it is why but I read a nice quote from one of the athletes, I think one of the rugby players, who said
we win gold and later we go to the discotheque.
Exactly.
Do you like Breitling?
No, he said if the flag is not allowed, we ourselves will be the flag. Rugby captain Elena Turan.
That's beautiful.
We know which country we stand for. And yeah, it's very dignified and Russian to persevere in
the face of adversity.
Yeah.
Unlike Americans. No, yeah, I think the whole them not being able to compete as a nation is probably just like a geopolitical slap on the wrist for like the residue of Russiagate, which they're still being punished for.
I think it's probably deeper than that. Okay. Because the Olympic Committee, you know, I think it's a little more global.
Yeah, but I think that it's just like...
Though obviously America has a tremendous amount of influence, but like Japan, you know, I don't think they particularly give a shit about Russiagate.
No, I know, but it's like this idea that like Russia is the kind of global villain on the world stage.
Yeah.
Perhaps second only to China, but not really. Like,
China's killing it too.
Yeah. All those 12-year-olds who cooked their birth certificates to say that they were 16 or whatever.
But gymnastics is traditionally, yeah, for a long time was the domain of the Russians.
Yeah.
And so it's glad to see them back in the number one spot.
Yeah.
Though I guess you could make the case that if Simone Biles did compete, she would have taken the gold.
Well, she will go on to compete, correct? Like in the individual
I'm not sure.
Events. I think this was like a team event. I'm really like, I have not been keeping up with the Olympics, but my only thing, like I feel like it's, you know, I saw somebody tweeting that like you literally, you know, Simone Biles is an elite athlete. She is physically and mentally prepared unlike anybody else, so you can't possibly like comprehend what she's experiencing necessarily.
Right.
And, like, I'm not really down with people like tearing her a new one on the TLC. He doesn't like it either. But I think like while we can't attack her, we also shouldn't commend her.
I've seen a lot of commending happening.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, she said she began, quote, fighting all those demons and couldn't hold them back. Then she said, this Olympic Games, I wanted it to be for myself when I came in, and I felt like I was still doing it for other people. Biles, 24, said as she cried after the team event on Tuesday. So that just like hurts my heart because doing what I love has been kind of taken away from me to please other people.
I mean, yes, and
that doesn't really sit right with me.
I mean, it doesn't, because I think like when
that's not what the Olympics are about.
Well, when you're an athlete, you cease being black or white or whatever, you become an ambassador of your country.
Right.
And it's very clear, as much as I love America and I love like American sports, like a lot of people feel like there's nothing left to represent, and they have transcended their national status and become like global hyper individuals. Well,
that's also the way that she and the other girls on the U.S. gymnastics team, I think, are treated by the media.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of kind of emphasis on nationalism and sort of the solidarity that typically is associated with the Olympics, because she's like, you know, the most famous gymnast in the States.
Yeah.
And she has tons and tons of like endorsements and brand ambassador deals, and she has become like a celebrity, which does place undue pressure on an athlete, I suppose.
Yeah, and she's become a race ambassador, which is also similarly unfair. Like,
right.
And all, you know, just like all of this talk about her being like a black athlete in the time of George Floyd's martyrdom or whatever, which is spearheaded, by the way, not by black people, but by narcissistic white liberals, has to be annoying on
the New York
level.
Times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to see in this Olympics, like Russia is symbolically forced to renounce its nationhood.
Yeah.
And America symbolically chooses to renounce its nationhood.
Totally.
Like, interesting time to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't know why. I don't want to tear her down, obviously. I know that literally no one on earth could comprehend what it's like to be in the position that she's in.
Yeah.
But I don't know, something about like the way I was raised, or I just couldn't imagine ever doing that. And being mentally prepared is part of it.
Yeah.
It's all like, to see her sort of celebrated and heralded as like the world's greatest gymnast, even though she completely
Dipped out.
balked under stress, doesn't make her a good athlete.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's
part of it.
Why I mean, like, I don't think it's fair to attack her, but it's also gross to commend her because she didn't really do anything right in that sense. Like, she sort of kind of, you know, threw her team under the bus to not compete.
Yeah, I think it must be some like inherited trauma or something for me pertaining to like my parents' athletic ambitions.
Your athletic pedigree, yeah.
Like, I feel triggered by it, almost like I imagine like my dad's trainer reacting to my dad doing something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that was just, a Russian person would never do that. That's
never
ever.
We would always like rise to the occasion.
That's part of it. It's the Olympics.
Athleticism also, how many cases do we have of athletes literally like tearing or spraining something in the middle of like an event and persevering going? It's like insane.
That's what the Olympics is about.
Yeah.
Like, feats of human achievement, the best of the best of the best, doing things that are amazing and summoning the mental and physical strength to not crumble under the pressure of it.
Well, yeah,
that's why it's amazing. That's what we should be like celebrating. We shouldn't be celebrating someone taking a mental health day.
Yeah, a mental health L. Yeah, no, it's true, and also like, so I don't want to tear her down, but I'm going to tear her down. But also like,
it's the Meghan Markleization of athletics.
Well, this is I think really the first time in history where people are encouraged to identify with weakness instead of strength, because unlike strength, weakness is not subject to the burden of proof. Nobody can question you if you're weak. And from that, people derive a newfound category of like strength as weakness.
Right.
Topping from the bottom.
Topping from the bottom.
And just it's very stifling and like suffocating to live in a cultural climate where everybody is telling their story and reliving their trauma.
Yeah.
Because we all know you're lying. Or not lying, but exaggerating in a manipulative way to suit your agenda at the time.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think Simone Biles is lying.
No, she's like extremely under pressure, but as you said,
and legitimately traumatized from being molested by that coach and stuff.
Well, yeah,
which is all part of her narrative, which is all, it's like, it's really the media kind of, I think, is to blame.
For, like, the media is to blame for like literally most bad developments in the past 5 years, if not since its advent. But but
it's one thing for like actresses or congresswomen to do it, but it seems like the Olympics should be a sacred space in which strength is the goal.
Like regular strength, yeah. And
regular,
like, also, no offense, but how many Olympic athletes throughout history were molested by their trainer and went on to persevere? Of course. Yeah, I mean,
commendable.
I think just like the problem also, like somebody else I saw on Twitter a really great comment that, you know, all the kind of racial stuff aside, the media circus aside, there is like a mental health crisis among Zoomers because they're so thin-skinned and so anxious. And really this comes down to not collective trauma, but to collective coddling, as much of a boomer as I sound, because these are people who for the most part have never been told no, have never been thrust into the real world, live consequence-free lives so that when something comes up that's like of consequence, they bulk and have performance anxiety. But Simone Biles really is in a different category because she's been training for this all her life.
Exactly. She's not a typical Zoomer in that way. So it's interesting to see her default on a kind of classic Zoomer script.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's a red herring.
For what?
I don't know. Doping? I don't know.
Yeah, she's actually...
Maybe she's on Adderall. I don't know. It's my instinct.
We all know what she has to do. She has to come out as non-binary. They, them.
She can't in good faith participate in the gendered Olympic categories. I mean, the Olympics are amazing. They're ancient. They're consistent.
Yeah.
It feels very disrespectful, I guess.
I think the only solution is to cut women out of the Olympics and bring it back to its old homosocial origins. Just kidding.
Men only.
Yeah, men only.
Yeah.
Just oil them up and have them mud wrestle. Or oil wrestle.
Let's bring gladiatorship back.
Yeah, some blood sport. Yeah.
It's a bummer, but...
Yeah, it sucks. But
happy for the Russian gold.
Me too.
Even though I guess I am rooting for America, for the record.
Yeah, but if the Russians won gold because of Simone Biles's mental health woes, more power to them. Mm-hmm. Just kidding.
Well, yeah, it's also a way for her, like, kind of ranking to remain undisputed.
Yeah, how so?
Like, if she's the best gymnast in the world
and she doesn't
compete, then in a way she still retains that title, though.
Like on technicality, like Kamala Harris.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Though I'll reiterate, doesn't count because summoning the mental strength is most of it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what athletes do.
I mean, listen, I had a baby in my bathroom medication free on the strength of my
mind over matter,
my Russian will to mind over matter.
Oh, and he's sleeping now. That's great.
Yeah, that's cute.
Oh. What else is on the docket?
Women getting drafted.
Oh,
they need to draft Simone Biles.
She'd be a great soldier.
Yeah, she would be. Yeah, and
then it would really give her. You learn a lot about mental resilience in
when you remotely drone
in the military
Arab families. Yeah.
Yeah, the Senate tried to pass a bill that would make women eligible for the draft, but I think it's going to go to Congress, and then I don't think it's going to pass.
Wait a second, what's the difference again?
There's 3 branches of government. There's the legislative. Bill on Capitol Hill. It's both the Congress and the Senate need to agree to pass a bill.
Yeah. Okay. Here, a U.S.
and then the
Senate
president
has approved legislation that would, if enacted, require young women to register for selective service alongside men, and in rare events of a war or other national emergency, be drafted for the first time in the nation's history.
Boo.
And this would be for women ages 18 to 26. So I've never felt better to be
nice.
Over the hill.
Fuck no, dude. Well, I would never qualify for... There's no way I would ever get drafted.
They're like, you look 23. Drafted.
No. I mean, look at these wrists.
Yeah, you can't. I can't picture you.
Limp-wristed, psychologically weak. I'll admit it.
No, I don't think you're psychologically weak.
When I was 26, I definitely was.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
I was a little more unstable, let's say.
But I guess let's cross that bridge when we get there, because it seems like this legislation, which is likely to pass, has not been passed yet. And I think this is another outrage circus culture war to get Republicans and liberals to freak out at each other about women's role in our culture.
Who wants this?
Getting drafted? Women getting drafted?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants it.
It doesn't seem like a partisan issue.
I mean, I think
No one wants to get drafted.
I mean, nobody wants to get drafted, but I think libtards probably sincerely believe that women should be drafted because they've like psyched themselves
it's a sign
out
of like
that it's
progress.
equality. Yeah, and it's like not, because it's measuring male and female equality on the wrong metrics, you know?
Right.
Like, very few women should have the desire to enter into any sort. I mean, first of all, we're not talking about like Nam style combat war, like Korea or something, because the whole nature of war has changed. So they're just going to be filling out spreadsheets. They're like filling out spreadsheets.
They get drafted as prostitutes for the
sex workers.
Yeah,
there is a worldwide draft of sex workers.
Let's go show those boys what they're fighting for, huh?
It's just going to be like female soldiers entering market stalls in Afghanistan, like asking to speak to the manager, to like shepherd, who's selling flatbreads and like
I tweeted this, but I'll repeat myself. I said, why would you draft a woman to be shopping?
Well, I like the thing that you texted me when you said that like it doesn't matter if women get drafted because they're all mentally ill, so they can evade. They'll
all be disqualified immediately, yes, because all women have BPD, as we've learned on this podcast, and all men have autism, which is great for military service.
Yeah, which is why they're compatible.
Exactly.
Yeah,
cats and dogs. Yeah. I just think with also, as you mentioned, the mental health crisis amongst Zoomers and young millennials, I just have serious doubts that most of the young population of this country would be fit to serve, especially women.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, literally everybody's obese and mentally ill.
Exactly.
I actually think that like we're probably more fit to serve, even though we're like retarded and incompetent and underweight, because at least we're not
mentally
obese
sound
and that mentally ill.
I just think I would rise to the occasion, I guess, if I had to.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean,
if I had to die for this country, if I had to drone bomb someone to preserve my way of life, I don't know. I just think, don't all chicks already have PTSD and stuff from the male gaze or whatever?
Toxic masculinity. And white supremacy.
And don't women in the military just get raped all the time?
Yeah, like at Woodstock 99.
Exactly. It's like a massive... There's a whole bunch of factors that make this seem like the worst idea.
So Biden said the United States does not need a larger military and we don't need a draft at this time. I would, however, ensure that women who are also eligible to register for the selective service system so that men and women are treated equally in the event of future conflicts. It's like so depressing. Like, treating women as equal cannon fodder, which like, again,
that's men's job.
Yeah. But it's not like men are really going into combat anymore.
No.
Either. It's all kind of becoming automated increasingly.
Yeah, though there is still, I mean...
Yeah, there's like troops. But, and it also, it just goes to show how cucked the men in our society are. They talk about in this article how back in 2016, when the initial idea was being seriously considered, all 4 service chiefs testified in favor of adding women. It's like, if you're a normal, sane man, every fiber in your being should feel the urge to protect women and children.
Yeah.
Not thrust them into uncomfortable and potentially harmful situations.
That's always been the division of labor.
Yeah.
Women get raped and do the hunting or do the gathering, and men do the hunting and the fighting.
Yeah.
Women do the bearing children and sitting on the ground. That's Lindy.
Yes.
Getting drafted is not Lindy.
Yeah, it's not.
Does any country have, I guess,
Israel has a female draft.
Right. Everyone has to join the IDF there.
But I would argue...
But they just dick around and make TikTok videos anyway.
Yeah.
And operate the Iron Dome.
Hang out on beaches and terrorize Palestinians. And also, like, I would argue that Israel, being a Jewish nation, is truly, like, a matriarchy.
Right.
Where women are, for better or worse, whatever you have to say about Israel, are given a level of respect that they don't have in the United States. And I don't mean that women are, like, abused or discriminated or that there's rape culture or anything, though that of course occurs, but I'm just saying they're not respected for their true virtues as women, which is
as leaders.
Yeah, which is, but like, you know, what is being a woman on some level? It really is being a prospective or current mother. It comes down to motherhood, and that's why you protect women, just like hypothetically, symbolically, right?
The fair sex,
yeah.
Physically weaker.
But I don't think that matters anymore.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter anymore. It's like that kind of role of women is now increasingly obsolete, I guess.
Yeah.
Hence this potential draft.
That sucks.
Yeah, it's like a different and new paradigm shift. Like everybody, like I think, like again, like no lives matter. Everybody is equally disposable now.
Right.
Anyway,
the Woodstock doc. Did you watch it?
Yeah.
What did you think?
Did I watch it? There's only one episode, right? Because it said one of one, but there's not going to be another one because I kind of feel they tied it.
They wrapped it up in a nice bow about what was really going on back then.
Welcome to Red Scare Music Festival, the only music festival of its kind. It's all call and response, racial slurs featuring Olivia Rodrigo, Dua Lipa, a hologram of DMX.
I saw Olivia Rodrigo in LA, by the way.
Oh, nice. How was that?
Gorgeous girl.
Yeah, she is. She's
beautiful.
Really gorgeous. Good for her.
But she was really doting on her boyfriend in a way.
Oh, I thought you saw her in concert. You saw her on the street.
No, yeah, I saw her at a restaurant. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like our music festival, just like our boyfriends, the dogs from Glenn Greenwald's dog rescue.
That'll be fun. Yeah, they can have a tent.
It's like a Bluetooth speaker playing Lana Del Rey because we can't get the real
Flip
deal.
5.
Yeah. We should do it. Run that woke film festival off the road and give them some competition. Coachella.
A live podcast. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. It's episodic, but I think each episode is like a different thing. And so this is the first episode of the Bill Simmons's like series, and it was about Woodstock 99.
Well, I have to say that I thought that this documentary was fascinating and enjoyable in spite of itself.
Yeah.
Because I think
it's just such a fun event.
Yeah. And I think that, the footage and the commentary told different stories. Like the commentary, the theme of the podcast, the documentary was very much white men ruined Woodstock 99 with racism and misogyny and homophobia and their toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And then
Fred Durst.
Yeah, Fred Durst. And then like the imagery, the footage was like happy and hot revelers.
Yeah.
In like a kind of Dionysian bacchanal, like setting bonfires and rolling around in human feces, but having fun and living it up. It's like these people don't look unhappy or angry or anything. I totally buy that like people got raped and assaulted and like fights broke out and pipes burst, but
that's a music festival, kind of. And this point was touched on briefly towards the beginning, but I would have liked to see it elucidated more, which was that like the first Woodstock was a shit show also.
Yeah,
like it just became this kind of cultural touch point for like the baby boomers who did a kind of like revisionism with the 60s. And so everyone forgot about how shitty it was.
Yeah.
And so then they did Woodstock 94, which was chill,
which was
allegedly.
supposedly like perfect and idyllic.
And then Woodstock 99 was sort of expanded and held on this like military base.
Yeah.
And
it was the first Chaz, technically.
Totally. Yeah.
It's just like enclosed
and
anarchy.
Capitalist greed sort of gutted it of its espoused values and turned it into this white male cis hetero shit show, which it definitely seemed like it was.
Yeah, I mean, you just like look out into the audience. I think that image that I tweeted of DMX like standing like a god before a crowd of like white college kids, compelling them to say the N-word. Like, what a beautiful glittering image.
Well, that's where it all really started to go downhill.
Yeah, I mean, it's, by the way, it's so sad what happened to DMX, because what a beautiful and powerful man.
Oh
like
God,
his voice,
amazing.
it was like so cool and strong, and he was just like incredible. Like, he's like a person who was just like, I don't know, uniquely talented. Even if he was maybe like not the best rapper or the best lyricist,
doesn't matter. It's
he
the
just
charisma.
had that. Yeah. But yeah, they really racialized that episode. Like Wesley Morris of the New York Times, who's like mega cucked, was like, imagine how it would feel to be a person of color in that crowd, or a woman of color. And they cut to like a really hot black chick riding some white guy's shoulders. It's just like, I don't know. It seems cool and like collectivist.
Yeah. Though, yeah, predominantly white, and that's that's who the sort of programming was catered to.
Yeah. DMX doing anti-racism. But like, I don't find it, I guess, racially troublesome that DMX had white kids mouthing the N-word from one of his songs. You know what I'm saying?
I'm sure they said it out loud.
They did. Yeah, they did. It was like a call and response. By the way, it's funny because every time one of these documentaries happens, like some like well-meaning liberal zooms in to tell you what call and response is. They're like, just, you know, from an African-American practice from the days of slavery. It's like, yeah, we get it. It's like self-explanatory.
We get it. Yeah. The Woodstock 99 doc, to me, is another bit of this like trend I'm seeing now of doing woke revisionism of the late 90s, early aughts, much like we're doing with like Britney and the way that like culture was back then. And it's this very, because that was really the last point. Like the 90s was the original sort of culture war. And then we came at the other end of it in the early aughts with like Limp Bizkit and Eminem and this
Kid Rock,
South Park,
Korn.
You know, there was this period of kind of like backlash against the policing of the original culture wars. And now that we're cycling back through it, we're looking back at these things from that era and making them problematic. Girls Gone Wild obviously is a big like that was the most interesting part of the doc to me.
Yeah, say more. I mean, also those girls who like showed up in droves topless, like they seemed to be having fun and they wanted to do it. Yeah. It's not like they were coerced or anything.
No, they seemed like they really loved having their tits out.
Yeah.
But then that contributed, I think, to a climate of widespread like groping and
Rapiness?
Sexual assault in the extreme.
No
because
shit.
It was, yeah. But that's very in line with the Bacchanalian vibe. And in a way, Woodstock 99 sort of is the logical conclusion of the free love espoused in the original Woodstock.
Yes, that's brilliant. That's well said, yeah.
It's sort of like taken to its problematic extreme because free love was already incredibly fraught and not so great for chicks.
Yeah, and totally nostalgized.
Exactly.
Like seen through rose-colored glasses. We were told, like, seriously, I mean, I say this again, like, I'm really not a contrarian or a provocateur or an edgelord. I don't get off on making people angry or upsetting them. What I really want in my heart of hearts is to get people to zoom out and think, and that even if they disagree with me in the end, they will come away with like a new purchase, a new lease on things. And it's like all these things that we take for granted as being good, feminism, birth control, SSRIs. Like, I'm serious. I'm not saying that they are uniformly bad, but they're not uniformly good. They have wreaked a lot of havoc in their wake, in addition to legitimately helping people.
Totally.
And like the logical conclusion of something like free love, which, you know, went hand in hand with like feminism, getting women into the labor force, was on some level the sexual and economic disenfranchisement of women.
Yeah.
Which was like the original theme of our podcast.
Totally. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right that like,
yeah, it's all fun and games. You get to take your tits out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until a frat boy like rapes you in a puddle.
Yeah. Like by the porta potties. With like a Corona bottle. I mean, it's very I totally believe that a bunch of horrible rapes went down. There was one that allegedly happened like right off of the stage while like an act was playing. I think it was Korn, and people watching. Nobody did anything, but like, I mean, no shit. Of course that's gonna happen when you put a bunch of like sweaty, horny college kids together.
Thousands and thousands.
Yeah.
Right. And them being white is pretty arbitrary.
Yeah, I think it would happen.
I think
if you did it with black people, with Hispanic people, like if you like a Freaknik style situation, but just maybe not Asians.
Though,
I'm kidding. I saw a chart that in the American South, Asians are way more vaccinated than whites, and then Hispanics, and then blacks.
Interesting.
Just like, I wonder why. But yeah, no, I think the race makeup is arbitrary. I think it would happen with any population.
Right. And the kind of the tidiness with which the documentary tries to craft the narrative of like the whiteness and the moment in the culture with like the rise of like angry white extreme music. That was sort of, there's this really annoying part where like Moby's talking about how like,
oh, I hate that limp-wristed fag. He's
I know.
So annoying.
He's the worst. And
in new metal, it was just a racism and homophobia.
Yeah. Yeah. Just so like shuddered. And by the way, Moby, I lived in LA when he was around, and he's definitely like.
Have you ever matched on Raya?
No, he hit on me at Jeffrey Deitch's house once.
Nice.
And he was always, kind of like hornily around.
Yeah.
If he if he hasn't raped someone, it's probably just a consequence of like a lack of brute strength.
Yeah. He weighs like 120 pounds.
Yeah, he's vegan.
Yeah.
His vegan neck tattoo. No, but he was trying to make this case that like in the grunge era, like Kurt Cobain, wore a dress and things were truly progressive, and then Kurt Cobain died and things were bad, and then the homophobia, and then the racism, and then Fred Durst was a monster, and he like encouraged this atmosphere. Well,
yeah, and it's funny. It's like he referred to like Kurt Cobain and Michael Stipe's enlightened progressive values.
Yeah,
which like and he said they were progressive, not aggressive. It's like the progressiveness got you to the aggressiveness. Mm-hmm. It's like time is a fat circle. That's what led to these feelings of like anger and frustration.
Right.
But yeah, there was. I'll pull up the Moby quote because I wrote it down incredulously. That I thought was also like total BS. It's interesting to see these like. So he talks about how a lot of times when white people embrace hip hop, they've ignored funk and R&B, ignored the subtlety, and embraced the misogyny and homophobia. And I think he was using this to kind of smear Kid Rock and Fred Durst, who like there was multiple occasions where they would refer to like Fred Durst as like a monster or moron, like they did to Trump in the media. And it's like Fred Durst was just Limp Bizkit was just another act.
Yeah, he's a performer.
He's a performer,
just like you, Moby.
Yeah, I'm not even particularly a fan of Limp Bizkit. I'm more of a Korn girl myself. Mm-hmm. But like that arc, I thought also was fascinating toward the end, where they talked about how Fred Durst inflamed the crowd when he was told to wind them down, and he told them to break stuff and created
ripping someone's head off.
And the whole time I was expecting something like that they were leading to like a legitimate tragic event, like some people got trampled or somebody died of hypothermia, which somebody ended up dying during the Metallica set.
There was 3 casualties total.
Yeah, it was like the fucking January 6th, like somebody died of a heart attack. friendly fire or whatever, but like
someone got a kidney stone from dehydration.
But it's really
pink eye.
It's really weird to like, I mean, the whole documentary felt bipolar because they'd raise some interesting points and then walk them back with this like post-Trump kind of post-MAGA blame game stuff. Where
Moby literally called, he said that like new metal appealed to troglodytes. Yeah. Was the word he used, which felt very in line with like deplorables.
It is, yeah. And it's so gay and angsty too. It's like, Moby, you're a musician. You should be like truly like Catholic in your tastes or whatever and appreciate everything.
Right. No, Moby's really highbrow.
Yeah. But it's funny because at the end they have to like sheepishly admit that actually nothing happened during the Limp Bizkit set.
Yeah.
And he did what performers do, which is like excite and titillate and rile up people.
Yeah.
Like he was literally just doing his job.
And then, yeah, they also try and make a weird point about, because there was Sheryl Crow, Alanis Morissette, and Jewel.
Oh, yeah.
And they were all headlining on different days.
The estrogen quota.
Yeah.
To quote one of the other gay journalists anyway.
And they try and make the case that the female performers were sort of tokenized and then contributed to like the inflammation of the crowd that culminated with like the Limp Bizkit and then the Metallica sets.
Yeah.
Which also felt like fake and gay.
Yeah. I'm sure
these are just like the popular acts of the time.
Yeah, where they were like the three alt divas of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Them and that chick that sang Bitch and the other chick that sang What If God Was One of Us or whatever.
They were really one-hit wonders though, I think.
But I remember like
Meredith Brooks is the name of them. Yeah. And Tori Amos. They all these kind of,
Yeah. But
Gen X tank top girls. Jewel looked great though.
She's hot. And actually I liked her commentary. I like her like dorky, weird Canadian accent, and I thought she was like one of the least retarded of the commentators.
Yeah.
You could actually feel kind of also the documentarians like shoehorning people's commentary into like a fake and gay narrative.
Of course, they like knew the story they wanted to tell.
Exactly. Yeah. Because like a lot of the musicians were like, yeah, I was just like pumped to be there, major crowd, you know, and they were trying to like whip up this like white supremacy
narrative. How did you
narrative.
feel when you looked in their angry white faces?
But it was like, yeah, really cool and exciting to just see so many people. Like I sometimes when I'm like drunk and alone, I put on the 1992 Pantera Domination tour in Moscow video.
Wow.
When they do like Cowboys from Hell and there's just like, I don't know, like hundreds of thousands of people in the crowd. I'm bad at estimating. I was always bad at the guess how many jelly beans are in the jar game, but it's so tremendous. It's like right after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and it's all this like, all these like Russian punk and metal kids like freaking the fuck out.
Yeah.
Like I don't think such incredible, massive, mostly positive human like collective kind of events exist now, except for maybe like football. And angry protests.
Sporting events, I guess. Though protests, don't really have a spirit of collectivism.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it all ended with Woodstock 99.
Yeah, with the rise of like social media probably, but...
Yeah. Though I was, my friend went to the Rolling Deep, like... There's a hip hop festival in Miami that's like massive.
Oh, sick.
And I was watching his Instagram stories and it looked just as much of a shit show. It looked like a lot of dehydrated people like going crazy.
I mean, that's what happens. And
yeah,
one of the journalists was like, I don't know why people stayed as long as they did. And there's Carson Daly trying to make himself look like he was like Muammar Gaddafi, you know, like he was going to be like pursued and sodomized.
Right.
And like
because of the spectacle, you can't leave.
Yeah, would you leave if you were there? Hell no.
I would definitely want to see it through.
I would stay until the bitter end.
I'd take my fucking top off.
Me too. I'd let somebody like push a porta potty over onto me and crush my frail body. Like
I would basically never go to a music festival at this point in my life.
Yeah, but if you were like 22,
totally,
and you had tics, like your boyfriend got you some tickets.
Yeah.
You'd be up in there until the very last
For sure.
minute.
I had heat stroke at Warped Tour when I was like 13.
That's cool. What happened?
Just happens.
What does heat stroke feel like? I don't think I've ever
Or
had
maybe
heat
it was
stroke.
like sun poisoning or something. I just got really sick and threw up from being in the sun too long in like a skate park in Las Vegas wearing my like Sex Pistols t-shirt. Trying to find an adult man to buy me alcohol.
This was also really sinister. Again, Wesley Morris, who's like a critic at the New York Times, and is like the whitest black guy ever. It's always the ones who are like the whitest. New metal was bound to happen. This is a country that was basically forged in white people impersonating black people. And he talks about how this like new metal would end up in a swamp, which is so gross to like conflate new metal with MAGA using this like terminology of the swamp, you know?
Yeah.
Like to make that kind of weird, like incoherent parallel. And like, I don't know. I mean, he's right. Actually, he's absolutely right that a big part of American music is like white people copying black people.
Totally.
But that's not the whole story. That's erasing the whole legacy of folk, of country.
Yeah.
Of these major movements.
Yeah. And like everything else in this documentary, it's like there's a confluence of factors that lead to an atmosphere, that lead to an event, that lead to a situation. There's like many different affects. There's many, it's like it's not as straightforward as like Girls Gone Wild was prominent, thus women were coerced into taking their tops off, thus they were raped. It's like it's way messier than that.
Yeah, totally.
And ditto with new metal. And I mean, the audience, like the tickets to Woodstock 99 were expensive.
Yeah, they were like, how much? Like
high, like, well, I don't know, more than $100.
I think I saw one of the tickets was like, well, they got in trouble because they were selling Poland Springs for $4. And I guess tickets were, I saw one of the stubs in the documentary was like 180.
Yeah,
which I
like
guess
it was a high price point. It was never like an egalitarian kind of event. And the white audience were not like, there's not a corollary between the attendees at Woodstock 99 and like MAGA, because the people who were at Woodstock 99 were like college students, pretty MAGAs, affluent. No, they're future libs.
Future libtards,
exactly. It's just such a false equivalence. Right, Lenny?
I wonder if the mic is picking up his little whimpering and breathing. That's cute. But yeah, like you do like have all this like gorgeous archival footage. Like, why not let it speak for itself? Yeah,
or like there's truly an interesting kind of like Fisherian article.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess the interesting aspect of this dominatrix documentary literally, like no pun intended, lives in the cleavage between the image and the word.
Yeah,
like it's in that liminal space.
Very well said. Yeah, totally. Yeah,
like it's fascinating again to watch this documentary, not just for the performances, but for like weighing like making your own kind of like
drawing your own conclusions.
Exactly. Also, how hot was Gavin Rossdale?
Ooh,
when he's like shirtless and sweaty. It's
awesome.
That's so cool. Just like being like hot and ripped and standing in front of like hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, totally.
I also liked how Anthony Kiedis, so there was like the East stage and the West stage, and the two final acts are Megadeth and Red Hot Chili Peppers, which I think is actually cruel and unfair because like how do you choose which one?
Pick? Yeah.
And Anthony Kiedis and like Flea was butt naked, which was like really cute. And
which would you pick? Me and you were at Woodstock 99.
I'd go with Chili Peppers.
Same. I mean, just
of all the metal bands, Megadeth is not my favorite. I mean, I would see them, but there's actually a really great documentary that's like on YouTube that is about the making of one of the Chili Peppers, the fire, sex, whatever, magic, toxic masculinity, white supremacy. And there's like a really cute scene with like a very young and cute Rick Rubin when he's like helping them like put this album together.
In the studio.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch it.
But yeah, they basically, the promoters, once again, like with Fred Durst, I guess they told Anthony Kiedis to like wind down the crowd because they were building bonfires from all these candles that they had handed out. And instead he had the band play Fire by Jimi Hendrix and was like, this looks like Apocalypse Now. Which is like, you can't trust musicians to
No. And charisma on that level, it's like the outcome of Woodstock 99 feels kind of just like a unstoppable force, you know, that was like bound to turn out this way.
Yeah.
And there was nothing that could have been done differently, I guess.
I think, well, yeah, but I mean, maybe my feeling about it, though, of course, I don't know the ins and outs, is that like this was a documentary that they tried to make it about like white men ruining Woodstock. I think it was probably, the true story is probably more like a story about cutting corners and shoddy planning. It's kind of like a Fyre Fest type situation.
Yeah, it definitely reminded me of those docs.
Like perhaps that's what went down.
I mean, that was definitely part of it with like the peace patrol, like basically being totally unqualified randoms who just like wandered off into the crowd as soon as they got their like t-shirts,
like, got their dicks sucked.
Basically, yeah. I would agree with that. And then, I mean, to me, it's sort of like Woodstock as like a doomed enterprise from the beginning of like the shoddy planning goes back to like
hippies.
The 60s and like the actual like flimsiness of the original project.
Yeah.
And so it couldn't really be ushered in like decades later into the 90s. And I mean, they talk about this a little bit, but I do think Y2K had an influence. That it contributed to a kind of like nihilism.
Yeah, because
and like,
people were like certain that the world would end, or like
even if they
consumer
weren't,
technology would end.
Yeah, even if they weren't. And I was very afraid of Y2K as a child, because I, you know, in my limited understanding, really thought that like the electrical grid would be fried somehow, you know, and I'm sure, you know, most reasonable adults didn't truly believe that Y2K would usher in some kind of finality, but I think the discourse around it did contribute to like an ambient death that
dread. And I think like rounding out the millennium in such a way, and it was also like a new millennium, which is like scary,
super
and
scary,
insane, and nobody had cell phones.
Nobody had cell phones.
But I
people living in the moment, you know.
Yeah, that's also
just
crazy.
Getting fingered in the moment.
when I was like watching kind of like the final scene of all these bonfires burning, I was like, man, if I was there, I'd be taking all these pics and like taking selfies. And I was like, oh wait, never mind. But I also love that when I forgot who it was, but they were like, and just like white men ushered in this like really dark era, the darkness of white men, and then it cuts to like that scene from Fight Club with Brad Pitt. It's just I
remember that.
Okay.
Yeah. Not a lot of mention of NAFTA, but
what's up? Yeah. But it's funny because also like
the blame falls squarely on the Clinton administration.
Yeah, exactly. I also I forgot about Y2K and the Clinton impeachment. It really feels like that was, I think it was like 20, 21 years ago, and it feels like literally 200 years ago.
I know.
But I think like there's this idea that they brought up at the beginning about how the original Woodstock was kind of like graced by a patina of nostalgia that made it look like this idyllic moment that was like beautiful.
Peace
and nothing
and
can
love,
go wrong.
Yeah.
And there were like,
the defining moment.
Right. Of like the like 68 Gen era, whatever. And, there is this idea, right, that like there is all this nostalgia manufactured and things were editorialized, But I think now we're in the midst of this new trend where instead of manufacturing positive nostalgia for past figures and events, we manufacture negative nostalgia, and we make them seem a lot more evil and demonic than they were. Like this whole application of contemporary morality to past figures and events.
As if it lends clarity rather than completely distorts.
Yeah, like it mystifies and confuses.
Exactly.
And like the beauty of being taught like a normative narrative in school or wherever is that then you start reading kind of like more edgy and renegade texts, and you start drawing your own conclusions. Howard and you realize that things weren't as great as they seemed, and there was some like toxic masculinity and rape culture or whatever.
Yeah.
But to lead with that, I think, is profoundly insulting.
Right.
Because it prevents people.
As if like knowing what we know now about white men, we can really look at Woodstock 99 with like crystal like clarity about what was actually going on.
But I think it like prevents people from thinking critically, except for in the negative, where everybody's like, no, this didn't happen. Like this is like a fake narrative.
Right.
And it just, like all around just like lends an air of negativity to everything, like a counterproductivity.
Yeah. But everyone already knew that Woodstock 99 was like a failure.
Yeah, but was it also?
I mean, you know,
I think the vast majority of people probably came and
probably had a good time. Yeah. 3 casualties, not too bad.
Yeah, just like statistically, right? If you bring that many people together in a single enclosed space, somebody's going to get raped and somebody's going to die.
In the midst of summer.
Yeah.
I mean, just the acts that were booked did contribute to an atmosphere of hostility.
To a great time.
Because they were popular precisely because the zeitgeist was hostile.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true, yeah.
It's not like they could have, like, they should have booked more at, like, folky, jewel type of acts. It would have been different. It was like...
Or, like, boy bands.
Exactly. Right. Also, they did the thing where it was like there were boy bands and then there was new metal, and it's just such a simplified kind of version also, like, of what was happening. I remember that. No,
because I was like in high school at that. I was like 14 or something, and I remember everybody just listened to everything.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It seems like to me, it's felt more harmonious.
Yeah.
Like now that's what I call music compilations.
Exactly. Yeah.
Of the day, like encompassed, many genres, and like. Top 40 wasn't stratified into these like ideological camps.
Yeah. It was like stratified along sex, because the boys listened to new metal for the most part and the girls listened to like teeny pop or whatever. But like that's not like unanimously or in a way that was like mutually exclusive, and they like both sides would like rib each other about their like gay taste in music.
Yeah.
And then like make out behind the bleachers. I do remember being like a teen and thinking like, man, I wish I could go to Woodstock 99, because I remember all the ample MTV coverage.
I don't remember Woodstock, but I remember I was too young, but I remember that era, and I remember Korn and Fred Durst, and I remember feeling a lot of trepidation and fear about it. And MTV also with like, because it wasn't like, they say Girls Gone Wild, because that's the next kind of like revisionist vilification that we're doing, and Girls Gone Wild is whatever, deplorable, but MTV was doing like, I remember watching like Spring Break,
and people would literally like spray whipped cream on their genitals.
And that's like seared into my brain as like a whipped cream bikini, and like MTV as this beacon of young adulthood that to me, I was 8 or 9, was like really freaky.
Yeah.
And titillating, but also like I was really scared. I was scared that I was gonna like have to put on a whipped cream bikini and like a man in a scary mask was gonna like yell at me. Like that's how young adulthood felt.
Yeah, next to one of those like car dealership inflatables.
Exactly.
Like, gyrates up and down. Yeah, one of my like most vivid memories from that age, it was probably, I'm gonna say 92, 94. So I was like really young. It was Radiohead at MTV Beach House Live, and I remember looking at Tom York and being like, he really doesn't belong here. He's pasty and
he's a creep.
He's a creep and wearing a Holocaust like striped shirt.
Yeah, that's an interesting impression.
But I think that there's something like, just I guess to conclude on my end, there's something like actually really toxic and false about tainting people's memories with woke revisionism.
Yeah.
It's uncharitable. It's unkind. And when I look at somebody like Wesley Morris, I think like, you are unfit to be a critic. You have nothing but contempt for art.
For the troglodytes that consume it. Mm-hmm. It's ungenerous and it's unproductive. Yeah. And it like reminds me of like when we talked to Adam Curtis, or sort of the thesis of that.
Yeah.
He would have made a great Woodstock 99 documentary.
That's right.
But the takeaway of the Bill Simmons one for me was like, all of this concerted effort to build this narrative of woke revisionism that ignores that it is something, that there's confluences of factors, and that reality and history are something that people like participate in together. Mm-hmm. There aren't just like the toxic actors of like the Girls Gone Wild crew. It's like everyone was participating,
right?
And everyone was, the girls took their tops off because they wanted to.
They literally wanted to. They thought it was fun and cool,
even if there was like, a more there even if there was features of like exploitation and like coercion, it was those women in the Woodstock 99 doc are like participating.
I mean, they literally seem like they're having a good time.
Yeah.
They seem overjoyed to be there. Again, like the disconnect.
And you can slow the footage down of someone getting groped and put like scary music over it.
Yeah, but they didn't even have footage of that.
There's like girls in the like sitting on guys' shoulders and other guys like grabbing their tits.
Grabbing a tit, yeah, but they didn't have like a smoking gun,
No, of course not.
And mostly it was just like shocking to watch because it was like, like girls partying it up and like with like body paint or something.
Yeah, a lot of body paint. We're back.
Fuck, I had a...
Only took us 3 years to figure out there's a pause button on the Zoom recording.
Yeah.
What were we on about?
I don't know. The Woodstock thing. Also, it's funny because there was that early attempt at like creating a shitty media men list. One of those pink-haired Gen X feminists who like after the festival had ended took to the early internet and made an anonymous forum.
Did you have a bad time at Woodstock?
And I was just like, I don't think she like, and of course she got dozens upon dozens, which means she got 24 responses of girls like getting raped and assaulted and stuff, having a bad time. And like, I don't think that she even was one of those girls. And I was like thinking like, I understand why somebody would want to tell their story if something bad happened to them. I really do understand that impulse, even though it's not my personal impulse. But like, I don't understand the impulse of being like the list author or moderator.
Yeah. Well, it's a list making is a Nazi trait, Anna.
Yeah, and a female trait. It's like women will literally leave a Yelp review for their rape. It's so crazy to me. Anyway, any concluding thoughts on the stock?
I think we nailed it.
Yeah.
I think we got at it from all angles.
The heat wave was created by climate change, which was created by white supremacy.
The end.
Do better. All right.
Thank you, Moby.
What are we on about next? What's next on the dock?
Next on the docket is protecting sex workers.
Oh, yeah.
What's another great piece in the New York Times?
Yeah.
What's the best way to protect sex workers depends on whom you ask.
I just want to say that Brace Belden did nothing wrong.
Brace Belden did nothing wrong. He got in some heat.
Yeah, I want to unpack that
via the True Anon. Twitter when he quoted the first paragraph of this article, which I'll read. T.S. Candy first traded sex at age 13 after she was forced out of her family home in Tennessee. To survive, she decided to lie about her age, she said, taking refuge with a group of older transgender women who became her mentors. They taught her how to support herself through sex, warning that she would have few options in the formal economy, which is often intolerant of trans people.
And then Brace posted a screenshot of that opening paragraph and with the caption pedophile apologia from the New York Times. And then he added in another tweet, if you're a child and an adult, quote, teaches you how to support yourself through sex, end quote, and warns you that you can never get a job because society will despises you. It's an error, I think, but you are not being mentored. You are being pimped and groomed.
Yeah.
Spot the lie.
Spot the lie.
But he got in trouble and he deleted, which I
respect.
It sucks. I'm not down with that clown, but I've done it myself. I get it when people are like piling on you.
Yeah, which they're gonna do anyway.
Yeah, like armies of like,
insinuating that he called trans women pedophiles somehow.
I mean, those trans women in that specific article who took that girl under their wing, or
maybe not pedophiles, but definitely
doing
like
something awful and criminal. Yeah, they're pimps. Yeah. So, and then it goes on. Now a New Yorker, Miss Candy, a 27-year-old trans woman, has since tried to find other forms of work, but at each of the jobs she has held, including managing a gas station and working as a private investigator, she has faced some combination of discrimination, docked pay, and termination in response to her identity. So she has always ended up back in the trade. Sex work saved my life. Sorry, what? Like, none of this adds up. You were a gas station manager and a private investigator, and somehow in every job that you landed in, you were faced with transphobic discrimination. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it's the point of the article, right? It's sort of about two opposing bills in Albany. One is called Stop Violence in the Sex Trade Act, which basically is like decriminalizing sex work, removing punishments for consensual workers, buyers, and people in between, like managers.
They're called managers because calling them pimps is racially
backers
insensitive.
of this bill avoid the word pimp, which they say has racist overtones. I mean, a pimp is a pimp is a pimp. Call it what you want. Another bill, the Sex Trade Survivors Justice and Equality Act, would focus on punishing customers and pimps in an attempt to strengthen current laws on sex trafficking.
So the first bill is supported by Miss Candy, and then the second bill is supported by this woman, Shaquana Blount, who was also entered into the sex trade as a teenager. She says not by choice.
Right. It says, Shaquana Blount's perspective is different. She entered the sex trade as a teenager, not by choice, implying that T.S. Candy, as a 13-year-old, was able to make the decision to pursue sex work.
Yeah.
Which isn't how it works.
Yeah.
Legally, ethically, logically, whatsoever. I
mean, again, I'm very skeptical of like the New York Times, which is like the paper of record, the paper of the like left liberal establishment, taking up the plight of like criminalized and marginalized sex workers, because they don't care. They're pushing an agenda.
Yeah.
And it's like shady as hell.
What end? That's what I don't understand. Because to me, it seems like the first bill, the one that aims at like decriminalizing sex work entirely, and they make the case that they often make in this sort of thing that like, because sex work is like stigmatized, it makes it more dangerous, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't seem to address sex trafficking in any meaningful way. Whereas at least the other bill would penalize like Johns and pimps.
Right. And of course, guess which bill the New York Times tacitly supports, of course. Yeah. And, I think just like this is really like the official ideology of the left, which is also the official ideology of the establishment, which is, the way that you self-actualize is by prostituting yourself. And it's one that like, again, wants you to think that your adversity is an opportunity, and that like, my feeling about it is like, they talk a big game about empowering sex workers. The way that you empower sex workers is not by like encouraging them to sell sex. It's by allowing them to sell sex, but giving them material alternatives.
Yeah.
And like one of these bills does that and the other one doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just doesn't seem like it deals with the problem at hand, which is sex trafficking. And when you have all these sort of obfuscated conversations about sex work is work, you can consent to engage in sex work, it ignores the glaring, horrible reality that the vast majority of people are forced into sex work out of material conditions.
It mixes metaphors, it conflates categories. It's really the same ideology as the Great Reset. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Like, you'll pimp yourself out and you'll be happy in, you know, every like way, shape, and form. And that there's like, so it's very weird also to watch them, the New York Times, approach this from, again, a trans Black Lives Matter angle, because it's also moral blackmail. Because again, who would disagree with protecting Black lives? Who would disagree with protecting trans people? Like, it's designed also to tug at the heartstrings of like affluent white liberals who never have to meet an actual trans Black person. Right.
They can read about their scrappy communities that teach them the tools of the trade.
Yeah, and they're like, this is like Paris is burning. Yeah, and it's just like, you know, I think they talk about I think like they talk about how like supporters of the Stop Violence bill are also pushing the city to reallocate its budget for the New York Police Department's Vice Squad, which handles sex crimes, to social support and harm reduction services. So again, this is yet another job program to create new positions for like social workers and management officials in the guise of helping the most vulnerable and the most marginalized.
I mean, you do have to invest in like a social work framework, you know.
Sure, but and in various resources that are by definition managerial, like keeping people in housing, in jobs, that sort of thing. But I think, like, you know, it's always like a red flag when there's an empowerment angle and they're trying to sell you this picture of sex work as this undifferentiated blob, which is also extremely empowering.
Right.
Because for the vast majority of people, it's not only unempowering, it's also involuntary.
Just about the lie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. And it's not, I mean, there should be harm reduction services, and I get them confused because they're so... Stop Violence in the Sex Trades Act is the decrim one. Sex Trade Survivors Justice and Equality Act is to me, seems just way more sensible, and I don't understand how anyone could take umbrage with it.
Yeah.
I guess under the guise of like stigma.
Yeah, well, there was another paragraph that was like, supporters of the Stop Violence bill, which would uphold current trafficking laws, find the survivors' approach, cracking down on buyers and pimps to decrease overall demand, disempowering to sex workers. They just don't believe that people, specifically women, have the capacity to make decisions over their bodies, said Cecilia Gentili, a former sex worker and leader of the decriminalization movement, who has also been trafficked. It's like 13-year-old girls are not women.
No, they don't have the authority to make decisions over their bodies.
And also, I agree with you that like you do need, again, a component of like, I guess, like social workers, mental health advocates, whatever, to help these to bridge.
Yeah, I'm not advocating for just like all outright like
law enforcement.
Yeah, like.
But what a bill like this does, I think, is it increases the supply of sex workers, which increases
the amount of sex trafficked
for
people.
Which increases the need for more and more NGO activity. It's all like, again, like it really is like a jobs program. It's like all bullshit to serve, put money in the coffers of rich white liberals at the end of the day.
You think that's
I think so, yeah.
That's why hence the Times like tacit endorsement of decriminalizing, because that's what I don't understand is like who actually stands to benefit from decriminalizing sex work at large.
I mean, I don't know enough about this, and I do think that like there is a conversation to be had about like allowing
world's oldest profession.
Yeah, allowing like of age sex workers to ply their trade.
Yeah, I don't think we need to have like draconian criminalization efforts, and we definitely shouldn't be penalizing or punishing prostitutes
or like child prostitutes.
Definitely not child prostitutes. But the responsibility does seem like it would fall on the Johns and the pimps.
Yeah.
Especially the pimps.
Yeah.
Especially the Johns.
I mean, you know something is horribly wrong when they start, when these people are like, well, we can't call them pimps because that's racist. Are you kidding me?
That's disturbing.
They're literally pimps. I don't care what race they are.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was I? But yeah, but it ignores... To ignore that sex trafficking is even an issue and conflate it into a question of like women consenting.
Yeah.
I do think that there should be forms of legal sex work. I think it has like a place in society.
Yeah.
It's a tale as old as time. But the issue at the forefront of these kind of conversations seems like it ought to be trafficking.
Right.
That's with any bill, any measure, any sort of like restructuring of laws around this issue should center trafficking victims and not like, because the truth is,
which would involve cracking down on their traffickers, which are usually pimps.
Yeah.
I mean, managers.
Because the fantasy of the like happy hooker, empowered sex worker, high price escort, whatever, is already basically decriminalized.
Right.
You know, like there are ways in which transactional sex happens at the like the liberal fantasy of like empowered sex trade,
which is why you have again this conflation of extremely risky street prostitution with like OnlyFans like ass pics.
Yeah.
And the kind of front facing like figureheads of that movement will always be like black trans women, because if you lead with them, nobody can second guess or cast doubt upon your intentions.
Right.
Which is like infuriating. And I don't know who these people are also online who see like a tweet like the one Brace made and see like transphobia in it.
Yeah.
Like, why are trans people, why are they held to a different standard when it comes to abusing and pimping kids?
Well, the idea is that
they're so
and I don't agree with this. Yeah,
that
they're marginalized. That this is like about like survival tactics.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, there's also this like convenient narrative that like no trans person can ever hold a job because if they do, they're like horribly discriminated against unless they're like a military contractor or drone operator. And they can't work at the local like BLM sign woke coffee shop because they're going to be subject to like oppression and transphobia. So their only recourse is sex work.
Right.
Like what kind of a society is
harmful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's absolutely like
incredibly disturbing article all around. As has been the backlash to it.
Yeah.
And then the criticism of the survivors bill, which also includes several nonprofit executives, skews toward people who have not experienced the sex trade themselves. Ms. Gentile said they're far removed from the reality of sex workers. And that, oh, thank you. We're like sitting in the dark ranting about sex trafficking. And under the Stop Violence bill, brick and mortar sex work establishments would be able to operate with signage wherever legal business is allowed. This would eliminate raids and prostitution arrests, which can be dangerous. And prostitution cases are currently heard in human trafficking intervention courts, specialized tribunals designed to divert sex workers from jail to programs, many run by survivor bill supporters. And the service that does that is called GEMS. GEMS. And it makes the case sort of that decriminalization is the move because then you'll have more cooperative victims.
What?
Exactly. Like I kind of just don't really follow it.
Yeah. And I think also like sex work in New York City, there is an interesting paragraph. I think everything, first of all, like went bottoms up after COVID. And there was an interesting paragraph where they talk about, sorry, I'm like looking at this. According to spokeswoman for the police department, it shifted its priorities in 2017 to focus on arresting buyers and promoters of prostitution instead of sex workers themselves. This decision has meant a reduction in arrests in the sex trade. 2019 saw 1,069 arrests of workers, buyers, and promoters. This year, there have been 93 arrests to date. And I'm wondering how much of that has to do just like with the pandemic and law enforcement scaling back. Getting an order, just scaling back, rounding up various like indigents and malcontents because they don't want another George Floyd style liability on their hands.
Right. I don't know.
Like I know for a fact that in my neighborhood, the police were told not to pursue any kind of misdemeanor offenses.
Right. Are they still doing that?
I don't know if they're still doing that now, but during the lockdowns and during the protests.
Yeah.
It was like...
because they were just spread too
buck
thin.
Wild up in here, like crazy.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, there's like plenty of people selling sex on my block. Also, just like, it's very stifling and suffocating to live in this world where like everything comes back down to transphobia or whatever, and that's the kind of ultimate cudgel. But what will they think of next, you know? Because there has to be like another...
I don't know, it seems to be working really really well,
so far,
the transphobia as third rail. Exactly. And I have not experienced, you know, work in being a sex worker, working in the sex trade. I don't work at an NGO, and I'm not like, maybe qualified to really speak on it, but I feel like any proposition that doesn't attempt to combat sex trafficking is misguided.
Right.
Because I can say that I'm like uniformly against people being trafficked.
Yeah, I think any proposition that encourages people to do sex work is misguided. I would even up the ante and say that, because I don't think people should be encouraged to do sex work, because I think it's ultimately invasive and corrosive.
Yeah.
It's not fun or good business.
I think for a very small portion of the population, it can be very, lucrative, and they're very well suited for it. And they ought to be able to professionalize if that's what they choose to do with their life. Yeah.
If you're like the 1%.
But it should be, it should be very well paid. And only if you're really good at fucking should you be allowed to
creme de la creme.
Yeah.
Dry hand jobs.
Exactly. And anything besides that is sad.
Yeah. But it's crazy to me that also such like a benign tweet, a non-controversial tweet, would generate so much anger and outrage.
Well, that's,
And I even get
Twitter
the feeling that, and I get the feeling that also the content of the tweet is less important than like
the outrage.
Taking him down a peg because he's lucrative.
Right. I mean, you get Twitter, and then you get trans Twitter. And that's a very outrageous contingent of people who...
A lot of toxic masculinity up in there.
Definitely.
No offense.
Some real problematic women.
No, I mean, I think like the kind of trans online contingent that's always like totally outrageous and vindictive. I don't think that that's even like a gender issue. It's a mental issue. Like online poisoning issue.
Definitely. It's an epidemic.
Yeah. At the intersection of too much porn and too much scrolling.
Yeah.
Should we
that's
talk about
diagnosed.
The Dirtbag Left?
Oh yeah. The post Dirtbag Left.
Oh yeah.
I guess is what
they're
calling it now. The New York Times, or the New Yorker, right? Wrote a piece.
The clean cut left.
Yeah, kind of. Well, the New Yorker basically started the term Dirtbag Left.
Wait, I thought it was Amber.
Well,
she invented the term, correct?
She invented it. The New Yorker ran that big puff piece on Chapo like 4 or 5 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of set the tone.
Yeah.
And now they've written another one kind of setting up the pod Know Your Enemy as like a foil to the toxic Dirtbag Left brand that the New Yorker itself had kind of established
boosted,
and described. You know, they diagnosed it and now they're like expanding on it.
I see.
Was my takeaway.
Right. They're creating a fake
they like
media
set
cycle.
them up to exactly. They set them up to be like, look at these dirtbag leftists, and now they've turned, you know, the other cheek and we're moving on to like earnest left,
from vulgar left to earnest left, from fringe DNC politics to mainstream DNC politics. It is like, you know, like the gift that keeps on giving.
Know Your Enemy clearly has a publicist. I'll just say it.
I think it's worse than that. The guy who wrote the article and one of the guys who hosts the podcast went to the same program at Brown University. Okay. So they're clearly friends.
They're clearly friends. That much is clear. But I'm really publicity pilled, Anna.
Yeah. And I think everybody has a publicist, yeah.
I've gained an
awareness.
an understanding from being on, you know, the inside, that all these people have publicists, and that's why they get these weird glowing write-ups and stuff.
Yeah.
Totally. It never occurred to me before.
Really?
I mean, it did, but I just kind of didn't. I think I naively did kind of think like, oh no, things gain traction and then they get, you know, written about it in the news, and that's, you know.
No, everything is like pay to play, as you said. But yeah, so it's basically they bill this article as like this much needed critique of Chapo, but it's really like a puff piece for this podcast, Know Your Enemy. That they bill themselves as a leftist guide to the various stripes of conservatives. It also feels kind of like this belated eulogy to Chapo and the Dirtbag Left. Even though they're still making money, they're no longer the media darlings, you know, and they've settled into this like post Bernie life or
malaise,
whatever. Yeah. But I think like the Chapos paved the way for leftism as a brand.
For podcasting.
Yeah, for podcasting.
As a lucrative venture.
With their like supposed, we have them to
thank you.
Like with their edginess and vulgarity. And now that they've served their purpose, there's been like an about face, and we're back to kind of like measured and sensible and moderate leftism as a brand.
Right.
But of course, you know, these people, I forgot it's Sam Adler-Bell and Matthew Sitton.
Yeah.
These people are far more obsessional and vindictive.
But they're so cordial.
They're so sweet and dignified.
They're so earnest.
And so basically it's funny because here's a really funny paragraph. Sitman grew up in white working class family in central Pennsylvania. His parents were self-described Christian fundamentalists and straight ticket Republicans, gods and guns voters, he called them in a 2016 essay in Dissent. And in college, he was too. During his 20s, as a graduate student in political theory at Georgetown, he started to doubt the axioms of conservatism. By his mid-30s, did you just...
Sorry.
We can blame it on the baby.
The baby did it.
Just like farting in public. And like, the baby did it. By his mid-30s, he was a Catholic and a democratic socialist. Adler Bell, who was reared in Connecticut by secular leftists, didn't have to defect from much of anything. So, like, tell me Sam Adler Bell's affluent without saying he's affluent. Sam Affluent Bell. And by the way, I Googled this guy because on a hunch, and of course, he's not a fan of ours.
He's not. He follows me.
I don't think he... Well...
What did he say about us? How dare he? We're mutuals, Sam.
Yeah, but that's how these people do you. They all...
No, I think he's a CIA agent, if I'm being honest.
The moderate...
I don't trust him.
Leftists, some of them follow me and they'll talk shit on me, like, behind my back, and I don't really care because I don't fuck with leftists. But I
retired from politics and I'm into entertainment now, so I'm moving on with
I'm a capitalist now. Here's his tweet. One of my pet theories about the lefty contrarian type, Taibbi, Red Scare, etc., is that they're incapable of not focusing on stuff that annoys them, and the more something annoys them, the more important and representative and worthy of critique it becomes in their mind. It's like, listen, I'm like with Vanessa Place. I think your critics are always right, and it's understandable why people would think that, and I'm not gonna try to defend myself.
So we're preoccupied with our like petty annoyances.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna try to dignify that with a response. But dude, you literally host a podcast about how much you hate conservatives.
Yeah. You know what he's doing? This is an elaborate mind game to annoy us so that we'll be preoccupied with him.
So that we talk about him on this podcast. Shit.
God. Oh,
we're so
got our asses.
And also that tweet perfectly proves his point, but in a way that indicts him.
Right.
And also, like, Matt Taibbi's not a contrarian. He's like an accomplished journalist who like is in semi-retirement, making bank and writing a Substack.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Also a capitalist.
Congrats on the publicity.
Yeah. But it's funny to read this profile because it's a lot of like fluffing. Like they call them erudite and bookish.
So sweet.
Yeah.
And weirdly come at the Chapo guys for being white.
I love that too.
Giving like a full-throated endorsement of these other white guys.
I was like, are you really going to Lena Dunham the Chapo guys for not having any people of color on their roster? What?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and then there was also, I kind of like, I came for the Chapo critique and stayed for the Cumtown reference.
Yeah.
I love when they like throw Cumtown in there because it's like, this is not even, like, it barely in my mind qualifies as a leftist podcast.
It's just adjacent.
It was just like a funny comedy podcast.
No mention of us, no mention of Truanon.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I have to.
Fine with me.
I know. And I saw Liz F tweeting about how she's the podcast that they didn't mention. I was like, girl, you're getting this wrong. You should be flattered.
I think
they didn't mention.
They probably are.
You should be happy if you're mentioned in the halls of the New York Times or the New Yorker. That's not a compliment.
I mean,
I like Red Scare erasure.
Me too.
I like being like a.
I like plateauing.
Yeah. Declining. I think like also complaining that Chapo was like too vulgar or too white is
which they were
weird.
Celebrated for prior. That's why you should really be glad for the erasure, is because they'll build you up but then they'll tear you right back down as soon as there's a new podcast in town hosted by some nicer people that are
with
more
better publicists. I mean, I think like if you're going to make a critique of Chapo's that they were too timid in addressing the failures and the excesses of the left.
Yeah.
They immediately caved to the worst aspects of their audience.
Apologized for that Bill Cosby joke.
Yeah, never. Because you know what their thinking is, you know, and you know, you can, you know, see their calculation, which is like a self-preserving calculation, which I get.
They make a lot of money, so.
Yeah. I mean, that's true.
And we, you know, maybe we could make more money if we succumb to some liberal pieties every now and then. I'm just kidding. I
guess. I think we've actually done a good job of like not
We're doing
succumbing.
amazing. Yeah.
Given, my feeling is that like a lot of these like outrage cycles, big issues are manufactured to like inflame and then fatigue
people. Wear you down.
but I personally couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell the truth. I know that's like,
I'm with you.
I do think that like I'm a foolish and naive person.
We're fallible.
Yeah, in some sense, but
we'll always speak our truth.
This is also a funny quote when he says that Chapo was more frankly anti-capitalist and more terminally jaded.
Oh yeah.
Like, they're not anti-capitalist or jaded. They're actually somewhat earnest.
Their banter could be stunted and dour with an endless deployment of dick jokes and personal insults. For a while, the show was doing something genuinely new. It's so shady.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who is this motherfucker? He went to Brown.
I should have done some more true and on-style investigative journalism into this guy.
I just saw that he didn't follow me on Twitter, and that was all I needed to know.
Who, wait, the writer or the...
The writer. Sam Adler-Bell does, or at least did, and spoke highly of me once to a mutual acquaintance of ours, who I do also think was a CIA agent in my most, like, paranoid moments. But
well, do you think these people are actual CIA agents, or are they or are they working for free? They're like CIA interns.
Yeah, they're aspiring CIA agents. They think if they pay their dues, they'll get a nice job at the State Department. Manufacturing consent.
Yeah. No, exactly. And
I don't listen to podcasts, so I can't speak to the quality of theirs. But did they have Bannon on? Because we did. And people really liked that episode. Yeah.
They liked it even more than the Adam Curtis episode. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think like it's literally impossible, or it gets increasingly impossible to make money whilst telling the truth, which is like the natural order of things. Eventually you get cucked and corrupted.
You think?
Yeah, totally.
You think it'll happen to us?
I think you have to be sort of shady and surreptitious about it. Like, you have to weasel your critiques in, as Mike White did in the White Lotus, where he makes this keeping up appearances style social satire.
It's got something for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
You either have to do it sort of surreptitiously, like kind of wink wink, nod nod, or whatever, tongue in cheek, or you have to do it extra institutionally, like Joe Rogan does.
That's
basically,
and then eventually you kind of shift the Overton window until what your truth is becomes viable to speak, I guess.
And the other thing is you have to set expectations early on for what you will and will not tolerate from your audience. Mm-hmm. And like, you can't cave to them.
No, they're not the boss of us.
Yeah, they're not the boss of you. Exactly.
All right. Is that the show?
Yeah, that's the show. I think
the show.
How long have we been going?
An hour and 43 minutes.
Oh, damn. That's a creamy, juicy show.
That's a nice one for the... Yeah. And you know what? Also what Chapo did wrong? The release schedule, too tight. You know, you want to...
Wait, really? Wait, they were like regular. Unlike us.
Exactly. We're
losers.
These podcasts are irregular, much like my menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
To keep our audience on their toes and make sure they don't get too comfortable.
Exactly.
You know? Maybe we'll take a little hiatus. Maybe we won't. Maybe you'll get 2 eps this week. Maybe you'll get 1. Stay vigilant.
We'll see you in hell.